I know folks are spread across all different time zones, but at least here on the East Coast where I am, it's like the heart of the afternoon. So yeah, really feeling excited to be with you all and to kick off the next session. Hopefully you were able to stretch or get some fresh air or something in this little break time. I'm Franklin Cantor. I serve as the Chief of Staff here at University of the Arts in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I've been the board secretary for CURC for, I guess, a year and a half or so, and have the pleasure of serving on the CURC board alongside many of the folks you've heard from today. Really excited to have our third presentation on partnerships for people on the planet. And we'd like to welcome Heather Trim, Executive Director of Zero Waste Washington. Heather has more than 25 years of experience in environmental work, ranging from zero waste to toxic chemicals and habitat issues. At Zero Waste Washington, her focus has been on reducing upstream sources of waste and addressing downstream impacts, getting toxic chemicals out of products, eliminating plastic pollution, and building on the organization's signature producer responsibility policy initiatives. Unfortunately, Liz, our UW Collegiate partner, was not able to join us today at the last minute, but we'll still look forward to a really rich conversation, and really welcome to Heather. Thank you so much.
Well, and luckily Liz provided me some slides.
Fabulous.
So all good, all good. Okay, all good on the, can you see it?
We can see it well. Thanks, Heather.
Okay, great. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Great to see you. I'm Heather Trim, Executive Director of Zero Waste Washington. And I really do work quite a bit with Liz, who's at UW and was not able to co-present with me. But she provided some slides today that we jointly presented in 2021. And I'm using a bunch of those slides, and then I'm adding a few more so you can kind of see the synergistic relationship that we have. Let's start advancing here. Okay, so for us, Zero Waste Washington, we are a statewide nonprofit in Washington State, and our goal is to primarily help get laws passed at the city, the county, and the state level, a little bit at the federal level. We do research projects and we do pilot community-based projects. And we have 7 focus areas. I don't want you to have to read all of these exactly, but you get an idea of the breadth of zero waste. But to draw your attention to the top left-hand corner. So one of the main things we do work on is producer responsibility laws. This image is cell phones from sort of representing the e-waste law that we helped get passed in 2006. And then we were the lead group working on this, but with hundreds of partners in Washington State to have safe drug take back. So we were the first in the nation. It was a really big deal. And so right now in Washington, if you have leftover medicine in your cabinet, you can take it to the sheriff's office, the hospital, or pharmacy, and you put it in one of these kiosks that looks like this. And now several other states have passed those laws. Again, paid for in this case by the pharmaceutical industry, the safe take back. So from Liz, so I'm trying to be mindful here of having kind of a back and forth between UW and us. So they have been an amazing leader, and you probably know this maybe from past conferences, in doing solid waste work and really leading, being leading edge. And so on the right-hand side, you can see the range of activities that they address. So the collection, education, outreach, infrastructure, and do a lot of data and studies and things like that. So terrific leader that we are very proud of. And oh, this is a slide from her, and this shows sort of the timeline of the types of activities that they have done over the past. It's not quite up to date today, but pretty getting there. And they did a study in 2004 that was early days for doing those kind of studies. They have just over time, and I know this is getting a little busy, but they basically have done a whole ton of piloting of different things. And what happened is we, as an outside nonprofit, and I started out actually more locally, we got things passed that then the university took on. So for example, banning bags, banning styrofoam in Seattle, banning organic material going to landfill, banning recyclables going in the landfill and things like that. So you can see that they have over time basically done a whole ton of amazing initiatives, and it's pretty impressive. So this is again from Liz, the waste hierarchy that we all subscribe to, and I'm sure you all do too as well. And I like it a lot because at the very bottom you can see the litter piece, which is a large driver for the public supporting a lot of the laws that we're trying to get passed. The public is also super frustrated with, excess packaging, but I just thought this was a really nice, way that they do it. And you can see, of course, the UW purple and gold colors. So this slide is a little awkward, but I wanted to go ahead and just use it because this is the slides that we did jointly together back in March of 2021. So we were in the middle of our legislative session, and we were presenting to the community at UW. So it was both staff and students and faculty there was quite a large audience, as I recall. And we were talking about a bill that we were in the middle of doing at that time, SB 5022, which was led by Senator Mona Das and Representative Liz Berry. And like I said, the date of this talk was March 21st, 2021. So we weren't done yet, but here's what happened. We got the bill, the senator got the bill passed, and we helped support it. And it was really kind of a great, cool kind of thing to be able to talk about with UW. And, I can't directly ask them to, I asked them to be advocates, but it was just, anyway, I'm sure that it helped. So what that bill did is it bans styrofoam food containers in Washington state. Starting in they gave them an extra year, so it starts in June of 2024. So it doesn't kick in yet. The first thing that's going to happen though is a ban of the styrofoam peanuts, packing peanuts. That's going to happen next year, and then recreational coolers. So this is pretty exciting. It was the 8th styrofoam ban in the country, and it was definitely the strongest at the time. I think it may still be the strongest. Well, I'm not sure if it's still the strongest. But another piece, and this was first in the nation, was to and this is I have a Starbucks example here. I'm going to get back to Starbucks and UW in just a minute. This requires that all restaurants, including schools, so including universities, including K through 12, and restaurants and fast food and farmers markets and DoorDash have to ask first before they provide utensils, cold cup beverages, straws, and condiment packages. So this actually kicked in earlier this year, January 1 of 2022. And then California has done a similar bill since then. And then another major part of that bill, 5022, was to require post-consumer recycled content for beverage containers. This followed what California was doing. We added a year. And this is so that we can get, true circular economy going, where we have material recycled back into products. We also, and this was the first in the world at that time, I mean, it actually still is maybe the only in the world. I don't know if anyone else has actually passed this, minimum recycled content post-consumer for household personal care products and cleaning products. And we've been going through rulemaking, and let me tell you, it's complicated. So this is what we ended that slideshow with, was the idea that that there were a lot of mechanisms that the audience that day could do to take action. So we had a call to action, and also kind of what you could do in your own personal life as well. So this again was you can see the purple and gold color. This was part of that UW, us working together to kind of send a joint message. All right, so now let me shift to this year, 2022. That was last year. So now I'm going to talk about this year. We had 8 zero waste related bills that we were working on at the state legislature. We actually had more bills, but these are the ones that had hearings and really had energy behind them. 4 of them did not make it, but 4 did make it. So we had a good year, and I want to particularly draw your attention to 2 bills that we're going to now bring back. So the top 2 bills in the peachy color, which is a packaging bill and a battery bill. I'm going to talk about those 2. Okay, so let's start with batteries, because this is something that I think really impacts a lot of universities. As you all know, we have a ton, just sort of an exploding quantity of, and pun intended there, of batteries that are being used in just like crazy in our society now. So, and you can see here, the bright blue is EV, electric cars. That is one of the largest growths, but also energy storage, which is the purple, the darker purple. So we have a major issue with more and more batteries. And how do we deal with them? And what do we do to safely manage them, but also not have people put them in landfills, because people are confused. And I'm sure you all have lots of them. So the big issue, which you're probably already aware of, is that the lithium ion batteries are, if you ding them just a teeny little bit, they super implode. It's like within less than a second, it basically creates a massive sort of little explosion, but big power, and it can immediately cause a major fire. This is a facility in Minneapolis. It was a recycling sorting facility because a lot of people put them in the recycle bin, and it caused a fire. And because a recycling and sorting facility has all that plastic and paper, it's so flammable that it burnt down to the ground. This is back in 2018. We have at least one recycling facility, MRF, that burns down a year in the US right now, and fires galore. I mean, so for example, in Washington state, and I'm sure you all have this too, the garbage trucks and the recycling trucks, if they get a fire in the back of their vehicle, they immediately dump the load on the street so that they won't lose the vehicle. And this happens on a regular basis. In fact, I think one happened just 2 weeks ago that I heard about here. This facility completely burned down in 2018. And it's a very intensive fire because these facilities are so fuel intensive. There was one in New York State when I was testifying on the battery bill 2 years ago. They just had a fire. The fire was the largest fire in Tioga County, I think it's the county, in recorded history. They had to have fire districts from 30 areas around them bring in fire trucks to help them deal with it. And it burned, I think, for 3 days. I mean, these are really serious. This is why you can't, the airlines don't want you to pack your any electronics in your suitcase. They want you to put it in, bring it on carry-on. So the other issue, and this is just from the other day, Kitsap County is the county that is, I'm looking at out the window. It's the county that is right next to Seattle, but across the water. Seattle's in King County. And this article was about the fact that we also have this huge growth in the storage, energy storage. So this is a battery. You can walk in it, but it's a battery. And this is for a solar panel field. And so this is the thing. We have a huge amount of growth here as well. So last year, Representative Harris-Talley offered a battery recycling bill. This would have been back in, no, this is this year, sorry, 2022, this year. This is the transfer station in Seattle where people can drop off their batteries. It got pretty far, and we are really hoping that this year we can get it across the finish line. In the meantime, California has a battery bill that they just passed and the governor just signed. So but our bill is a little different. We're addressing all batteries. So the little portable batteries that are like the ones that you'd have for your flashlight, the medium-sized batteries, which are the ones for EV bikes and for power tools, and then the large format batteries, like I just showed you, the giant batteries, the storage batteries, and that includes EV vehicle batteries as well. And I should have said, we have a new sponsor. Unfortunately, Rep. Harris-Talley decided not to run again. She was wonderful. And so we have a new Stanford, which is a new sponsor, which is Senator Derek Stanford. And we are in the middle of stakeholder meetings right now, even though our session doesn't start till January 9th. We are in the middle of intense stakeholder meetings right now. Okay, so now let's look at packaging. In Washington State, we have quite a bit of data on our recyclables and what isn't being recycled. So right now, annually, we have less than 50% of our material, the consumer material, is being recycled. And you can see here the large bars going across show you that, paper is almost 50-50 being recycled or being landfilled. What is that? Paper is pretty recyclable. Why is that going to the landfill? Big problem. So what this means is that we just did this calculation on recent data just last month. $104 million worth of resources are going to our landfill in Washington State. And Colorado just passed a bill on this, and they had a different number, but this was a very important talking point to kind of tell the public, whoa, you're throwing resources away. What is that? So what I'm aiming at here with these slides is that we are working on a producer responsibility, extended producer responsibility bill for Washington State, where the manufacturers pay for the end of life of packaging and printed paper products. This policy has been in place around the world, well, in Germany since the early 90s and in Europe. So all the different colors on here show you where all of the producer responsibility laws for packaging are in place or in the works. And Canada, of course, has been a leader on this. So as you can see, the United States is gray, but in the last few years, there's been a lot of action. So the blue is introduced in 21-22. You can see Washington State's that there, and that was what I was talking about when I was doing that UW talk. And then in green are the two states, Maine and Oregon, that passed them last year. And then in yellow, California and Colorado, which just passed them in the last few months. So there's a lot of momentum. We would like Washington State to be number 5 this year, coming up in January. So what this means is that the producers or the manufacturers or the brands, and so there's a very complicated tiered definition of what is a producer. That is one of the big, it took 2 months to negotiate that last year, just the definition of producer. And what they are responsible for is fully funding recycling, and that means recycling for all residents and multifamily, that includes multifamily. And so extending a lot more recycling to our rural areas, for example. Infrastructure improvements, we need new trucks, we need better equipment at the recycling facilities. Consistent education with one list across the entire state, so we reduce confusion. Recycling and reuse targets, responsible recycling, and that gets at the issue of the end markets, and then use of recycled materials. So the bill has a new name. We just got this new name, and these are our two sponsors. So it's going to be called the WRAP Act. We try to get names that are kind of catchy. So it's the WRAP Act, and it's going to be sponsored by Senator Christine Rolfes and Rep. Liz Berry. And the stakeholder process for that here has already started in Washington. So now back to some of the innovations that UW has done. So here is the thing. They have really done cool initiatives. So this is back in 2008. They worked with Coke and they created the first compostable cold beverage cup. And then Coke used that all around the world, which I think is just really awesome. Then more recently, they have partnered with Aussie to do these green reuse containers. So the way it works, and I copied this from their website because it's kind of complicated, and I know you don't want to necessarily read all the detail here, but they basically pay $5 and they get a token, the students. They use it when they place their food order, and then when they are done with their item, they're asked to wash it out, which probably means just sort of wash it, not clean it so much, but just get it basically rinsed. And then they return it, and then they get a fresh token. So there's a $5 upfront cost, but other than that, they can keep reusing it. And I suspect in the end, if they wanted to, they could probably get a $5 back at the very end. I'm sure they have a way to do that. Anyway, this is awesome. We need this all throughout Seattle, all throughout Washington State, and maybe even some of your campuses are already doing something like this. I just think this is really terrific. And then this one was a really big one. We had been pushing Starbucks, and as you know, Starbucks is right here. We are their headquarters. We've been pushing them, the advocates have been pushing them very hard to come up with a cup that could be both compostable and recyclable. And but especially compostable, because coffee cups are one of the #1 things that we have in a lot of our waste streams, especially in downtown. And so they worked at UW, and UW, the Starbucks on UW's campus was the only Starbucks in the world that had a compostable coffee cup in place. And now they've moved that around the world. And then they also did a partnership to develop the green compostable straws. I don't know if any of you all have those in your locations, but here that's required. So all Starbucks here and all restaurants here have compostable straws. But Starbucks, of course, wants their signature green straw. And by the way, I used it the other day. It works well. It's a very well-performing straw. Okay, so just to conclude, we do a lot of work, and I'm sure that a lot of nonprofits where we have capstone projects from the students, interns, and class projects. We get approached a lot by different professors or programs at UW, mainly UW, but also other schools, to do projects with their students. And it's been incredibly beneficial. And I particularly want to highlight this particular thing. So we had a capstone, no, let's see. It was a capstone sort of internship project to do intensive research on our organic material management. So our yard and food waste across the entire state. This report was done by this awesome, particularly this one student, and it came up with 37 policy recommendations. And this is on our website. It's under publications. I'll go back a second here. It's on our website, zerowastewashington.org, under publications. It was published in May of 2021. And huge list of recommendations. And here's what happened. That led directly to our doing stakeholder work and then ending up with a massive, very far-reaching bill that was championed by Rep. Joe Fitzgibbon on the right, and then in the Senate, Senator Mona Das. This is a huge bill, and it just passed earlier this year. So basically, that work from that student directly led to this effort. And I tell him this, and I'm not sure he quite believes me, but it's like, wow, look at what you were able to accomplish, get kicked off. I mean, obviously a whole ton of other people were involved, but it was really a pretty cool thing. The other things that we generally do that are things that kind of can interact with students is we do litter assessments where we are trying to quantify so that we can have litter be listed as a pollutant under the Clean Water Act. We're doing furniture repair events and tool libraries and fix-it events. We're trying to get refill stations in all of our buildings. And we also have a work group that we're doing for school cafeterias. That's in this case, K through 12, to try to get to durables, so replace styrofoam and disposables and other sustainable features. And that's a work group that we are doing here in Washington. So thank you all very much. And this again has Liz's contact and my contact. And I think the PowerPoint will ultimately be available for you all in the materials.
Thank you, Heather. Really, thank you very much. And for representing Liz and UW as well. I know never an easy task, even when you feel like you know somebody else's content. We got a bunch of questions coming in. I'll say at least there's a lot of envy, I think, for the context you're in and the support you have from legislators and from the community in general. Can you just talk, sort of briefly or broadly about how you've built some of those relationships and how you've sort of developed that general context?
Okay, and you mean with the university or with the legislators? Or both?
I'm going to say broadly speaking,
okay,
with partners.
So I don't know. I mean, it just sort of happened. I mean, basically with Liz, I think part of it is that Liz reached out. So maybe that's really what it is, because nonprofits are crazy busy, and we aren't ever sure that a university really does want to work with us. And so I would say that it was probably Liz reaching out to us and saying, "Hey, can we work together?" That probably got it really started, and it's been great. In terms of legislators, that's lobbying, and so that is university staff are not allowed to do that because they're state employees. But I can, and that's why we have to be careful in our presentations that we are really talking about educating when we do that. But we can do call to action, and then we also have some student groups that work, and we directly work with them. They come and testify on bills and things like that. So I have to say though, but the bottom line first thing is that we were reached out to by Liz and UW staff.
Terrific, thanks. To just follow up briefly with the, the relationships you've built with the legislators and understanding that there's a big lobbying element to that, but like everybody, these are folks with a lot on their plate and a lot of potential areas in which to take their interest and energy. What is it about Washington or the relationships you've had that has made that so successful, where this has been able to become a priority?
All right, well, two answers. One, we're a pretty progressive state, at least on the western side, and generally that has helped make environmental issues a high priority. And And then I think what you all probably recognize is that sustainability and waste and things like that are very personal to people. And so people get it. It's hard to describe, for example, what I used to do a lot of work on toxics and air pollution. It's sort of abstract, like, okay, there's this air pollution, we need to do this, that, and the other. It's like, kind of hard to grasp. When it comes to zero waste and sustainability and these sort of very real things like banning styrofoam, it's easy to grasp, and it's easy to rally public support because of all the pollution that they're seeing in the environment. And of course, the other issue about Washington State is there's just such a huge premium placed on, the natural experiences and recreation, things like that. So I think some of those states that have more of that probably have more of that other thing about the, plastic littering along the highway and in the parks and things like that.
Thank you. We had a bunch of questions that came in from the chat, but just before we jump into those, anybody who had a question that they wanted to unmute or raise their hand and ask themselves?
I'll unmute. I haven't said anything in a while. My eyes are glossing over from looking at the computer screen for 4 hours, so maybe it'll help.
Corey, I can't tell what university you're with. What university are you with?
University of Vermont, way on the east coast of
the other recreational endpoint.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that'd be a fun trip. My first question really was just how is, and you may have covered this, is how your organization is funded mostly. I'd love to hear more about that, and maybe even a brief history of how it got started.
Oh, okay. Well, how it got started. Let me start with how it got started. This is our 40th anniversary. September was our 40th anniversary, and we were founded by activists who tried to get a bottle bill passed in Washington State in 1978, and they failed twice at the ballot. And so they said, we're going to form an activist group. And so they founded this group, and then it evolved to where we are today. So that's how we got started. We are like many, many environmental groups that you all are going to encounter. We're funded by a combination of foundations, grants from foundations, some grants from government, and member donations, and a little bit of corporate sponsorship. Different environmental groups have there are different places on the sort of spectrum of what they take from corporate. We have a pretty strict corporate sponsorship criteria that we have for that. But almost every environmental group that you encounter is going to have that same sort of menu of the way we get funded.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah.
One of the questions that came in from the chat asked about the presentation that you said that you gave collaboratively with UW. What was the audience for that presentation? How did that come together?
Well, it was on Zoom. So, because it was during pandemic. And so I could see all the different faces, but I didn't really know everybody. But I had given probably annually presentations in person before. So it is a combination of staff and faculty and students who come. So these are advertised broadly.
Terrific. We have a question here. Could you share more about the product labeling for the compostable Coke cup?
Okay, well, that's funny because I spoke this morning in the organic section about compostable products. So compostable products is one of our biggest bugaboos, and I have a feeling you all are struggling like everyone else on this topic. We want to have the food waste go to the organic stream. So we want products that'll help make that happen. But the problem is we have a patchwork of what's accepted by the different composters in our state. Some will take PLA, polylactic acid, so the plastic compostable products, but many of them will not. And some won't take anything other than food and yard waste, or some won't even take food. So we have an incredible patchwork. And so one of our bills that I didn't mention here is that we're going to try to do a task force on that, on compostable products coming up to kind of basically come to a reckoning on it. California is also sort of trying to do the same thing. And if a few states, I think, can do this, it'll help maybe figure out a way so we can get a standard across the US, because it is a real big challenge. You pay extra for compostable products, but then a lot of them are going to go to landfill in a lot of places if you don't have compost. And the thing with the cups is that lining, so two things. Okay, so when you recycle a coffee cup or a paper cup that has a plastic liner on it, it actually, the pulp and paper mills are now able to actually pulp the paper and then have the film kind of float off, and they can actually separate off the film. That's good, I guess, because it's happening, but it's bad because they have up to 30% residuals at the pulp and paper mills, 30%, meaning stuff that is not the paper they really want. And so really, we should not be doing that to them. And so that's kind of crazy. But on the composting side, we don't want to have toxic chemicals going into the compost. And so the idea is to have a cup or a clamshell or a plate that really is truly compostable, has no toxics. And that's that sweet spot that I think they were aiming for.
Emma, I think you've got your hand raised.
Does, yeah.
Yes, a follow-up to that. It's something, I work for a zero waste consultancy, and we're making some product recommendations for compostable serviceware. And I'm kind of out of my element and trying, is it PLA, like there's like cellulose, biopolymers, bioplastics, what's the difference? And like some, I really just can't decide like what material that they should go with. They're already sourcing PLA, but as you already mentioned, like a lot of composters don't like that, sticks around for too long. So there's like PHA, TPS, PCL, cellulose, chitin, all this stuff, and I'm just a little overwhelmed. So if you have any guidance, I would.
Okay, well, this is a very tough one. Basically, I think in the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to have this settle out, and we're going to have much more clarity for people who are purchasing, which will be helpful for you. In Washington State, we have one city that has actually passed a law that no to-go ware can be anything but backyard compostable, as in fiber that will compost at lower temperature and shorter days. Is that the route we're going to go? I don't know. I generally do try to get people as much as possible to use fiber, or really to use reuse. I mean, our goal here is reusables. Like, for example, those red, like for hamburgers and burgers and things, a red basket with a paper liner, the paper liner and the food goes in the organics bin, the red basket can easily be, rinsed off. I would say that I would be reluctant to give you any direct advice right now, because it depends on your composters in the area that you're helping here. But I do think overall this landscape is going to get easier in a couple of years. We're all struggling with it. We want to get the food waste out of the landfill. That's our goal here, and have clean, high quality compost.
Thank you.
And I saw there was a question that someone said about, it happened to pop on my screen. Are we trying to get Coke to go to refill? Yes. So Coca-Cola in the UK is piloting refillable Coke bottles. And in our extended producer responsibly bottle bill, we are going to have a target for reuse that is going to have to be set. So the beverage containers are sort of the front line on going to refill again. And we have beer breweries in Vancouver, BC to our north, and in Portland, Oregon below us that are doing beer refill with a standardized bottle. And a bunch of breweries are all participating. I happen to see that one question.
Yeah, so earlier today we heard about some composting facilities that really can process many of the products that are labeled as compostable. Here in Pennsylvania, where I am, that is almost never an option. And in the comments, we have somebody who wrote that they weren't aware of composting facilities actually fully composting PLA serviceware in Oregon or in California, et cetera. What are you seeing happening nationally at partner organizations and other sort of venues that is helping to advance this kind of conversation?
Okay, well, it happens to be out of Washington State, but CMA, which is Compost something A Association Alliance.
Yeah.
CMA. They are actually testing the products at real composters. So that certification, I think, is a really great certification, because you now have real live actual testing to say that these products truly did decompose. Now, my worry is, what about toxic chemicals that are in them? Not PFAS. We've already passed a law on PFAS. I think PFAS is going to go out the door in the next couple of years, but but other toxic chemicals. And so even if it's composted, you can't see it. Is it in fact, getting rid of any kind of toxic chemicals? But at least CMA is doing that level of real life testing, which I think is really great. And then of course, there's this huge money and change that's going on across the US. We're going to get a lot more composting facilities coming. So, and I think that the big companies are going to probably, because they want to get the food waste because of the laws we're passing, they're going to try to figure out how to get the products that they can take. But we're in this sort of transition period right now, I think.
Yeah, I remember even one of the compost haulers we used to use, they wouldn't take napkins. I mean, it was so restricted. And so to see real progress happening, whether in the policy space or from the manufacturer end, is really exciting. Corey had another really good question about the policy roadmap slide and how that was created. This kind of actionable roadmap can be really beneficial when people don't know where to start.
Right.
Could you
Well,
say a little bit more?
Well, I'd say that we jointly did that together. And it was because we were in the middle of legislative session that I added things like that, and then she added things that were related to the UW campus. So it would be particular, I think, to a particular collaboration that you would create that, but that's how it happened. We were like, okay, she said, I want to have the final slide be an action slide. And then we just brainstormed it and came up with it. And then they had the fancy graphic designer. All those pretty purple slides are their fancy graphic designer, not us.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the group? I think those are most of what what we've received thus far. Okay,
great. And I know you want to get on to your other activity.
You know what? There's one more question to ask here. Talking about your work with Starbucks, lots of our colleges and universities have on-campus coffee shops. Do you have a list of sort of best practices, low-hanging fruit, easy things to ask for that organizations like ours can generally adapt to each campus context?
Well, if just spitballing, I mean, I would say going to compostable products. But the main thing is if you're dining on site, so if they're going to have tables right around their coffee thing, go to the durables, like the coffee cups and things like that, ceramic. There are a lot of studies that have been done by, there's a Rethink Disposables in California where they have case studies to show you save money if you do the durables in-house. Or for local. And then I would, if you can get the Aussie or some other system going, I would totally do that. And then, try to make sure that they actually are composting. It's going to depend on the facilities on your campus, of course, but those would be the things related to coffee shops. And then, the food waste. So Starbucks has been a major leader in, at the end of the day, when they have leftover food, they are donating it to the food banks, and they're very proud of it. And they have a very good system in place. So that would be another thing that I would, I guess, strive for.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just going to pause one more time to say, are there any other questions? You've been so gracious and thoughtful in your responses. So thank you very much.
Well, you all are an awesome audience, and I wish you all the best.
Franklin, can I just
please,
just in terms of franchises, like chains, you mentioned Starbucks, and we have a Starbucks. I'm sure everybody has a Starbucks on their campus, and we're fortunate at Hopkins that's really the only chain we have. We've partnered with, we prioritize local businesses to do most of our like coffee shops and that kind of thing. But the idea of Starbucks doing food recovery and donation, would that be something that's happening in Washington? Is it happening across the country at all of the other chain franchised shops? Or would we just go to our Starbucks?
Good question, but why not ask? Say, if you're doing it over there, why aren't you doing it here? Mm-hmm. Right?
And would they also have the compostable cups?
Right.
How would we do that?
Exactly. I would just ask. Yeah.
Thank you, Heather, and really thanks for such a enriching discussion.
All right. Well, have a great rest of your session, and nice to see you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
So, sorry, Corey, I interrupted you there.
Oh, I was just saying thank you.
Oh,
Sorry.
great. So just like we did in the previous session, we'll go back into the Google Slides and do the same brainstorming activity. I think Emily will be able to throw the link in the chat, and I will share my screen. Oh, Emily's got it already done, which is perfect. Just so that we can get into the slide. It's, I think, slide number 7 now. Collegiate and nonprofit partnerships, potential partner brainstorm. Let's take 5 minutes and have folks populate with new ideas, thoughts from this session.
And feel free to hop back onto the other slides if you had some ideas that popped up in between. I made a duplicate slide if anybody wants to move to the next one if it's getting full.
For those who are already starting to think about the next thing, the last slide is the potential project ideas. Feel free to jump down to, at this point, I think slide number 9, and begin to populate anything that this discussion has prompted.
think someone's sharing their screen. Oh, there we go.
Okay, seems like we've got some good ideas here, 9 slides full of ideas. So thanks all for their contributions. I know it's been a lot of listening, which is wonderful. And, you know, hopefully lots of note taking. And this could be, I think this is a great time for us to transition over to the breakout roundtable sessions. And I think I'll hand things over to Corey.
Thank you, Franklin. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, we're heading into the home stretch, and I think we are slightly ahead of schedule. So I don't know if folks need a break. I think we're probably doing okay. I think folks had a break just before 3 o'clock. So maybe we'll just start off a little bit early if that's okay with people. We're going to head to the part of the workshop that's usually people's favorites. Back when we used to meet in person, these are the roundtable sessions. This is an opportunity for everybody to join smaller breakout rooms that are focused on specific topics that we face in our daily work, or perhaps you just like to learn more about them. These are roundtables are for you to join your peers. This is informal. It's an open dialogue around, you know, the challenges that we face, the best practices that we can help each other with regarding waste reduction, diversion programs, initiatives, things like that. So in just a minute, you'll get to choose which one you want to jump into, and obviously, I believe you can kind of jump back and forth if you wish. The first one is going to be waste in labs, which is certainly a big thing. You can discuss opportunities about reduction and diversion in laboratory-specific items. Vendor contracts, that's one that I'm going to start off with. We'll be discussing the fascinating world of RFPs, which I know I'll be embarking on in 2023. Vendor management and incorporating meaningful sustainability language into contracts that will hold vendors accountable. Pesky material stream is our third one, like things like film plastic, polystyrene, and other waste that cannot go into your regular recycling bins. And then launching or relaunching a waste diversion program. You can chat with others about launching a waste diversion program from scratch, or potentially how do you relaunch one or re-engage your campus community after some challenging years. And then the last one is basically going to be like a choose your own adventure. So if you don't know what you want to talk about, or want to know the other topics are really of interest to you, feel free to kind of choose this last one. I think Emily will open up the breakout rooms, and then we'll be able to jump in there and talk to each other. And just going to ask that folks introduce themselves when we're in there, so we all kind of know who we're talking about. So go ahead and choose your room, and we'll get to it.